We're here with Amber Sherman, chair of the Black Young Democrats of America. We're going to talk about some of their recent work in Tennessee and other places with Stop Cop City and her experience with political organizing over the years and all the different stuff she's gotten into. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
Good. Good. Thanks for joining us. Yeah. So if you could just start off, kind of, I'm wondering, like, what's your background and what was kind of your breaking point? A lot of the people that we talk to, they kind of have a central moment or one issue where things kind of went too far, or they saw something that they couldn't let slide. If you want to talk about that.
Yeah. So I would say the within organizing, I've been organizing for a while, since college. And the main turning point for me was when I was working on um, like pushing against the governor's privatization plan for like public colleges and universities. He wanted to like privatize different services at the colleges, and I went to like a very small state school, and so like it was the only like source of employment in the town that the school was in, other than Walmart. And so if those people lost their jobs, like there wasn't a place for them to go. And as like the plan was becoming like more of a realistic thing, it kind of really became a turning point for me. And I threw like the first protest in my college in like over 30 years. It was like this huge thing, and really kind of kicked off other schools doing more, and pushing back more, which eventually led to them actually ending the privatization plan. And I would say like within organizing, what really pushed me to be like more of an abolitionist, was when Breonna Taylor was murdered. I like was very big around like police brutality organizing and ending money bail here in Memphis.
Mm-hmm.
But when she was killed, I really like did more political education around abolition and really just felt like there was no redeeming this. Like there wasn't anything you could change. Like this was just a system that had to be dismantled. And it kind of really set in for me after that.
Okay. And you said you're an abolitionist. What do you mean by that?
Like I don't believe in like police and carceral systems. Like I don't believe in the carceral state. I don't believe in prisons, police, ICE, uh, DCS, like no
Mm-hmm.
like type of like corporate or state entity that surveils and polices black bodies.
Okay. Okay. And a lot of people would come back at that kind of immediately with like, oh, it's lawlessness and this and that. It would be this way or that way, and like, I don't know. A lot of people talk about replacing, but it seems like it's not really about that. But what would replace it? You think if there were no police, no, say, ICE.
I mean, I think that well, one ICE is recent, right? ICE didn't
Mm-hmm.
exist this entire time. ICE is a very recent like entity. Like it was invented in like the 2000s. So like there
Yeah.
were practices before that didn't use an entire immigration like police force. But I would say when folks push back and talk about like lawlessness or like chaos, my question is always okay. So why not try it and see what happens? Because no one knows. Like those are assumptions. The assumption is like, oh, there's gonna be lawlessness and people are gonna commit crimes, but we haven't done it before, so you
Mm-hmm.
don't know what that would look like. And there are
Okay.
lots of orgs who've been doing transformative justice and restorative justice practices within their communities for years. Durham, North Carolina has had the Spirit House that's done like different TJ and restorative justice practices that don't use policing, that resolve things throughout the community since 1994. And that's when I was born.
What
So
was that
close
called?
to
The
50 years.
Spirit House.
Yeah, it's called the Spirit House, and it's a source of like transformative justice and restorative justice where folks can go and like do community led practices that don't involve police, but also like solidarity economy and like bartering and other stuff that don't
Mm-hmm.
actually include capitalism.
Interesting. So, okay. So how would I kind of want to expand this a little bit. This is interesting. How would this apply to, say, somebody in the city who might be, in a situation where they get arrested or they're a victim of, one of those things you want to abolish?
I mean, so they have community courts. They have them here actually, and they have them other places. And like to use a community court, it really will involve like a partnership with your like local DA's office or something like that. But I know that they've had community courts, like the different governmental bodies have used community courts for quite a while. They use them here in Memphis, they have them in Chicago, they have them in North Carolina, they have them in the Midwest. Like they have them in all types of cities.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's not an uncommon thing either. And then a lot of places don't even have like options where you're arrested. Like in Nashville, they have a pilot program they've been using for several years. They've renewed it multiple times, and it's towards any money bail. Where if you get a misdemeanor and it's a non-violent misdemeanor or like just a basic traffic citation, you just get a ticket. So you're not
Mm-hmm.
actually arrested. They just give you a citation, and depending on what it is, you go to court. For some things, you don't. And that's a practice that a lot of people have been using in other places as well, like not using the carceral state for things as punitive responses that are just poverty crimes. So
Mm-hmm.
I would say one that there's a lot of abolitionist type practices that have already been being used that could be expanded on. We just haven't seen full abolition, but two, we haven't done it yet. So you can't make assumptions about what will happen unless you're
Mm.
willing to do it and see if that happens.
Yeah, it is interesting, and in other places, like it's not like in places where there's not a formal police force. Everyone is just out in the street, stealing and killing each other. That seems
Yeah,
to
I mean, but
only
they tried that
happen.
in Minneapolis, though. Like
Exactly,
in
exactly.
Minneapolis,
Yeah.
they didn't use police. Anti-police terror project in Oakland responds to mental health crises and like people in crisis with police all the time. And
Mm-hmm.
people don't use police all the time there. Like if someone has a mental health crisis, they call a certain hotline that's available
Mm-hmm.
from a certain time period, right? Like there are other practices people could use. The only thing missing is the resources to fund them, really.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, so you think alternative um, alternative programs are better? Uh, well, where would that funding come from, or um, what would be an alternative approach?
I mean, for me, it's going to come from the police budget because in
Yeah.
Memphis, the police make up over a third of the actual city budget. They get over $300 million.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, it's always cutting their personnel budget. Like, there's no reason you should have all these executives making $100,000, $200,000 just because they're a lieutenant. I don't care about that. Like,
Mm-hmm.
cut the budget, free the funds for the people because people need those resources, not some random lieutenant so he can live in Cordova in a fancy house and not have to interact with people.
Yeah, and it seems like, I don't know. Maybe you can speak on this, but places with the most police, and obviously it may be a cause, but places with the most police or the most expensive police forces often have like the most lawless environments. At least as far as I've seen, like in America.
Mm, I don't agree. I think that
No.
I've seen varying sides of police forces, and the crime was pretty much the same. Like, and they try to use a lot of propaganda to make it seem like the crime is out of control. But in Memphis, you're more likely to experience racism than you are to be killed. 1% of the people, the black folks in Memphis, are gonna be killed in a homicide, but 30% are gonna experience racism. So
Hmm. So, what do you think though? Then in some areas, like what causes ineffective police? Like I know in
they're
Philadelphia a lot of
ineffective because police don't like solve crime. They don't stop crime. So they're going to continue
right.
to always be ineffective because police are not showing up until after a quote unquote crime has been committed, or they're using pretextual stops and discrimination to stop folks who they feel look suspicious but haven't necessarily done anything.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not able to resolve or reduce crime because that's not their intent. Their intent is to surveil and traumatize black people, and that's what they're doing.
Hmm. Yeah, interesting. And I've heard many cases like things can be happening right in front of them. I mean, I've seen myself. Things happen right in front of you. Cops are right there, and they either can't do anything about it, or they don't want to, or they won't. It I don't know, creates very dystopian kind of situation. I think.
Yeah, I think that so I think it just shows how useless they are, and how much there's this ideal put into people's head about what cops can do and who they are and what they like contribute to society until you experience it and know that that's not true.
Hmm. So, do you think these kinds of things are dangerous? Like cops? I don't. Um, now, I will say I'm not advocating for this, but do you think cops like are dangerous? Uh, and if so, how would you combat, say, violent crime or truly lawless, reckless people in a kind of defunded environment?
I mean, I definitely think the most dangerous people are cops because they're the ones who usually have a weapon, have the power and the ego that really drives their unrealistic behavior. And I think it depends on what you mean by like lawless or like the type of behavior that you're talking about, because a lot of that is a very like once in a blue moon type of thing. Like we don't
Yeah.
see people. I don't see people every day going and just shooting folks, right? Like
Right.
I see people who are homeless, who maybe like stole something from a store, or who might be like joyriding in a car, which aren't like violent crimes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like poverty crimes to me aren't violent crimes. When I think of a violent crime, I'm thinking of like somebody on a killing spree or something. And what does it mean to one, keep people safe, so stop that person from killing folks, but also find out why the fuck they killing folks? What's
Mm-hmm.
wrong with them? Like, people don't just do that for no reason. And we tend to treat white folks with, the care and respect and love that we feel like they need if they're on a, with having a mental breakdown or,
Mm-hmm.
experiencing some kind of um if they're on a like killing folks, or just doing something that we would consider quote unquote lawless. But when we see black folks just perceived as looking violent, we kill them. So I think it also depends on um like who we're looking at in the situation, and also asking why we aren't giving everyone the same care and concern that we give white folks. Because just last week some random white man was in a lake here in Memphis throwing a knife around, and I saw 15 cops jump in the water and get him out. And nobody tased them, nobody shot him, but they can't do a traffic stop without killing somebody. So I'm just
Yeah.
confused as to why black folks are never given that same care and concern.
You're confused. Yeah. A great example of that is like Jeffrey Dahmer. Even in the movie about it, I mean, he kills people. He gets a movie. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
ridiculous. But even in the movie,
Well,
there's a
you won't
lady.
see no movies about black serial killers because there really aren't any. So, but I do
Right.
agree that
Right.
we humanize white folks even when they're out murdering majority gay, black, and brown people. We humanize them in this way. We give them a backstory, make them seem so sympathetic, and they had a mental problem and they didn't have good parents. But if it was a black person, we would be calling them a monster.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah. I think
the
we
double
should do
standard
that.
is very loud.
I think everybody should be humanized, but there is definitely like a real bias, whether it comes from the media or comes from politics, directly, indirectly. I don't know. Where do you think that comes from? Because you seem to talk about a lot of things as if they're systemically, as if they're engineered to hurt certain communities, black people, other groups of people.
Yeah, I definitely think they're engineered that way. I think most like systems of oppression are engineered in that way. And I think that the proof is in what we're seeing. The proof is in the data. The proof is in the video footage that we see constantly coming out. The proof
Mm-hmm.
is in the media coverage. The proof is in the stories of folks who are being murdered by police. Like it's obviously there. So it's not just me saying random statements. There's all the
Yeah.
proof in the world there to back them up. It's more so like, are you going to believe it or not? Because a lot of folks just have willful ignorance and won't believe that it's real.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I've seen that a lot of people, if you live in more rural areas or even just more insular places, it's kind of hard to accept even about your own country. But what do you think the the purpose of these systems are? Because I've seen in some things we're working on, like cameras in courtrooms. Certain people don't want cases being recorded, but it has a greater purpose than it costs too much or something. Whatever whatever they
Mm-hmm.
say.
I mean, aren't the cases already recorded? That doesn't make any sense.
Not oftentimes not. But what do you think the purpose of those systems are?
I mean, I think that a lot of folks want more, like, quote unquote, transparency and accountability. But I
Mm-hmm.
also think that we can't transparency and accountability ourselves out of systemic racism and white
Yeah.
supremacy. Those systems are inherently built in. There's no way to, like, work your way out of that with cameras and
Oh
body
no,
cameras.
I agree. I'm not
No, no,
conflating
no. I
the
didn't think you
two.
were. I'm just saying. I don't think there's
Yeah.
a way to work your way out of it with a body camera or a camera in a courtroom or audio or a sidearm trigger that turns your body camera. Like none of those things are gonna like attack the actual issue, which is white supremacy and systemic racism.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. But what do you think the like what would be the case if there weren't those systems in place? You know, like what is being stopped? Kind of is my question.
Mm, what do you mean?
Like you were saying, to keep black people down, to keep communities down, and to uh, disenfranchise in a way, but to what end?
Oh, okay, okay. I mean, I think to the end of like where we just aren't able to sustain ourselves anymore. Like you can only traumatize people for so long until they start to like actually reap the effects of that, and you actually really see that like up close and personal.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. I don't know. I don't know. I think there's all kinds of you know, I think there's all kinds of reasons for that. To be honest, like uh, I don't know. Like I think too, even part of the racism, like from other groups towards uh, towards black people or any other group, uh, is kind of engineered, like instilled in people. But it seems to be for a some greater purpose. I'm not sure what it is. Sorry, there's a fly in my way. But so you've worked with Black Lives Matter before, kind of on that same note. What kind of work have you done with them?
So I'm a member of our official Black Lives Matter Memphis chapter here in Memphis. And I've done a lot of work around. So when I first like joined, I did a lot of work around ending money bail. I actually wrote legislation to end money bail here in Tennessee that was introduced in our state house a few times. We've been working on like getting better bail practices. We sued the county along with some other organizations about their bail practices that forced them to create a new bail court as well as like new bail practices because they were holding people for extremely long times. I mean, our jails continue to be full, especially throughout COVID. And they were giving them exorbitant bail amounts for things that didn't make any sense to have that high of a bail for. So we really were like holding their feet to the fire on that, and they didn't want to go to court because they knew they were wrong. So they settled and created new practices. So we've been working on that and still doing a lot of like accountability work around that. And then I did a lot of, well, led the work here around the Tyree Nichols case and like the different ordinances that we had passed. So I did a lot of work around like police brutality stuff, decreasing the amount of access that police have to people through those ordinances. So
Mm-hmm.
through passing the pretextual stop ordinance, they aren't able to stop people for these like five most common pretextual stops, which decrease their interaction with people by like 43% or something. They aren't able to use unmarked cars to stop people anymore, which really decreased the amount of like interaction they had with people, and they've been pissed about it ever since. It's
Oh,
great.
jeez. Huh. And what? For our viewers, maybe unfamiliar with this case, that was in Tennessee.
Yeah,
You
Tyree
said.
Nichols was murdered in Memphis.
Okay, he was murdered by a police officer.
He was beat to death by several police officers. He was initially stopped by this white officer who like yanked him out of his car and tased him. And then he proceeded to like run, and these other officers caught up to him and like beat him to death. It was five black officers. And then the EMTs who were there on the scene who didn't render him any aid were also fired from their jobs. Um, there was a sheriff officer, someone who got suspended too, because a lot of people that responded to the call. Apparently, there was a lot of people there on the scene.
Mm-hmm.
They just didn't do anything. So it was a a huge case here because like, we've never seen something like that. That was crazy. We have seen people like be assaulted by police and like assaulted by the Scorpion unit who stopped him, but never like beat to actual death.
Hmm. That is terrible. Sorry. And what did you guys do in response to that?
So we had like a list of demands, and we just went one by one until they were answered. So the first demand was them releasing the body camera and the body camera footage, and the mayor and other folks weren't responding. So I organized some folks to crash the MLK Awards, like brunch he was doing, some kind of brunch event that he does for MLK's birthday.
Mm-hmm.
We crashed that event, and I went live on Facebook and just started rapid fire asking him questions like, why haven't you released the footage? Why'd you put out this press release that doesn't say anything? Why is he being given special treatment? Like, just
Mm-hmm.
basically just bird dogging him until he just was saying all kinds of crazy shit that he really shouldn't have said. It was great. Um, and then we continued to press them to release the footage. They eventually showed his family. And then that's when we organized the protest on the bridge to get them to shut down the Scorpion unit, which is what the specialized unit that stopped him. So then we shut down a bridge for like 5 or 6 hours. It's
Dang.
the Memphis Arkansas bridge, so a lot of like trucking companies and other folks use that bridge to cross. We shut down major traffic for several hours, late into the night, and then the next day we shut down another street because they still hadn't closed down the Scorpion unit. And then about 30 minutes into that protest, they shut down the Scorpion unit. So then we moved on to like the next demands. We just kind of kept going over and over and over again,
Mm-hmm.
and then started pushing for the ordinances. So we had three different ordinances, and I organized folks to continue to show up for them, make public comment, like pushing them to do the right thing and passing them, and they eventually did. We wrote four ordinances. Of the four ordinances we wrote, three of them got introduced, and um, one of them we wanted amended, but it didn't get amended. But we still got three in, which was better than nothing. So
Mm-hmm.
of those three, we got them all passed, and now we're doing an accountability campaign around like making sure folks are following the ordinances.
Wow. Yeah. Sometimes it's good to put a little pressure on. Like a lot of people, like you said, they start saying things they can't back up, saying crazy stuff. Um, we've had some experience with that. And then when you ask questions and when they have no comment, that kind of
Mm-hmm.
tells you everything you need to know, even if it seems like something small. That's fun when that happens. Um, have you ever had any issues you pursued where you really couldn't move and shake as effectively?
No,
No,
no.
no. Nothing that didn't work out politically.
Um, nope. Every time I run for office, I won. So, and every like piece of legislation I've introduced, other than the bail legislation, any kind of like legislation I've introduced in YDA or other stuff is passed. So I don't know what it's like to lose.
Good for you. There you go. How did you get into YDA?
Some of my friends were in it and were like, "Oh, don't you want to come to this convention?" So I went to the national convention, and I was like, "This looks interesting." And I ran for like a national office and won, and started kind of like pushing the envelope, um, like pushing them to be more like radically aligned, not as like blue dog Democrat, like way more like liberal, heavy left leaning. Started introducing like different resolutions and platform pieces. I introduced a resolution in support of defunding the police. That was like a big thing that passed. This past convention, I introduced legislation, one to renew the defunding the police resolution, but also to add it as a platform piece so that every Young Dems chapter has to also use it in their platform.
Mm-hmm.
And then I introduced legislation to stop Cop City, like to support the Stop Cop City movement, and to oppose the building of the Atlanta training facility, both of which passed as well. Um, what else have I done? I did some stuff around like fair pay for women and stuff too, but that's about it.
Oh, nice. And so, how long have you been with them?
I've been a member of Young Dems for about like 6 years.
Oh, nice. So, are they as effective like in other areas of the country, um, or are there certain places they focus on?
I mean, so there, it's national. It's a national org. I would say that the effectiveness is based off what you do. So, like, since I've been in the org, I've done a lot to like call out hypocrisy within the Democratic Party. Last year, I created a YBDA Mobilize campaign that like really called out like the most important things to us as young Dems. Around like things the president has promised, so like student loan cancellation, stuff like that. We released a video on MLK's birthday calling out Biden for being the white moderate that was hindering progress. It had different like executive board members reading off that quote from the speech, and calling Biden out for being the white moderate. Like the reasons why we don't have the things that we need is Biden's fault. And the reasons why young Dems don't want to support him is because he has not answered for the things that he's promised us.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I had different like state presidents and other like members throughout the country write op-eds about student loans and how it was affecting them, how it was like hindering their livelihoods and being able to like flourish because we have these student loans that were promised to be forgiven that have not been forgiven. We ran like an ad that said like send your student loan reminders to Biden, like
Oh,
forward them
nice.
to him. We released a legislative agenda around different pieces of legislation that we felt were most important to young Dems, which were student loan cancellation, the Breathe Act, and the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. Um, what else did we do? And then we did like a rally, like a digital rally with different congressional members about like why student loan cancellation was so important.
Oh, very nice. Uh, so with the student loan cancellation, um, do you think like I don't know the way I see it? Say loans are forgiven in 20 years. Um, I don't know what repercussions colleges have, um, given any of this legislation, but what should we do next time? Next time people have to have them forgiven. Do you think there's any alternative to that? Because seems like it really messes with a lot of people.
I mean, I think that we should go back to free college like it was before Nixon was a racist piece of shit and made college cost money because he was upset that organizers and activists were like on college campus, quote unquote, as he said it, wasting time instead of what he considered to be productive because they were pushing for a required African American history or Pan African classes. And then after you saw that happening in California, they started pushing towards college costing more money. And then all of a sudden, when he became president,
Mm-hmm.
they started pushing for student loans more. Like, and they removed the different costs were well, the different like options where college was free, and they made sure there was a cost to it because they wanted to limit the amount of black people who were going to schools because they said that y'all not finna get up in here and start radicalizing these colleges. We finna get y'all on up out of here,
That's what they
and that
said.
was their response. Yeah, that was their response to people in the 70s, the 60s, and 70s protesting and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you think so? Do you think that would resolve itself, or would that require another round of organizing?
Um,
Or is that included in the legislation?
I
I
think
personally
I
haven't
think it would
read it.
depend on what the legislation says, right? Like, because I want Biden to just pick up the pen and sign an executive order, which he has the power to do. So I think it would depend on what's in the executive order, really.
I see. And so you think of course, like this would lead to, more uh, like a well-educated uh, population. But do you think this would like change the quality of schools or anything?
I don't think so. I mean, I think the quality of schools as they are right now are about as good as it's gonna get. I don't think that it's gonna change because we removed a cost barrier.
Mm,
There shouldn't be a cost barrier anyways.
yeah, I don't know. I think if anything, it might get better because there's not an incentive. There's no pressure if it's all loan money. That most people can't pay back. What is their incentive? They're getting the money from the bank, and then if they don't get it, they get it from the government.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm interested in seeing how that plays out. So what are you
Yeah.
guys working
Yeah.
on, kind of moving forward?
I mean, so right now we're still doing the accountability campaign here in
Okay.
Memphis. We have a mayoral election coming up, and the sheriff is running for mayor. But the sheriff also is a horrible sheriff. There was a young black guy here 2 weeks ago named Jarvion Hudspeth, who was killed by a sheriff deputy, and he still hasn't released the video footage, even though we've been asking and pressuring him. So we've been doing a lot of like different actions around that, and then also around Cop City because we want to stop Cop City. Cop City is going to affect everyone throughout the nation. The Atlanta Police Foundation has touted this as a national police training center where over 43% of the people who are going to be going there won't live in Atlanta. And that's going to be a huge issue for Memphis where we're trying to demilitarize the police, right? We don't want
Mm-hmm.
them to be receiving this kind of deadly training. We want them to not be receiving it at all. And then also not be in contact with citizens. Actually, we want them removed from traffic enforcement entirely. And so that means that they wouldn't be interacting with people that much at all. So why would they need all these different types of training? You know,
Mm-hmm.
so we're really trying to press the issue on that ways to stop Cop City. I know right now they're I've been helping a lot with like different canvassing, and they'll be pushing for this referendum that they have. I'll be helping out with that, um, and then also just like sounding the alarm here on how important it is that like people know this is a national issue, that it affects everybody. Because if they build Cop City, they will invite cops from all over the country because that's the only way they can actually make the money to pay back the loans that they got. Because
Mm-hmm.
just using the police there alone won't actually make that money back. So they have to invite people from all over. And we know that Memphis will say yes because it's Memphis.
And who would be making the money back? Uh,
So the Atlanta Police Foundation had a set amount of money they had to raise, and then they got a set amount of money from the city of Atlanta.
okay.
The money that they raised, they had to get a bond from a bank, so a loan that they're going to take out, and they'll be paying over time. The only way they can pay that is one by building the building so they can have people there for training and inviting people from all over to use it because that way they'll be
Mm-hmm.
getting services.
Yeah.
And people
Other
will be
other
paying
organizations.
they'll be paying to use the facility. So, and they even talked about like people having events there. Like they're trying to sell this as like a one stop shop for different things because they
Mm-hmm.
need people to come use the facility so they can make the money back. But none of that matters because Cop City will never be built, and we already know that. So we're gonna keep fighting against it because it's not gonna happen.
Mm. I mean, you heard it here. You heard it here first. It's not gonna happen. So, why are you so confident though? If they have to make the money back, as you say, and it is government funded, so that may not be the biggest problem either way. You could raise, any amount of money from people like that, but uh,
So it's not fully government funded. The city council only gave them a partial amount of money. The other money they had to privately raise.
mhm,
And I think that I'm sure that's not going to happen because we're seeing in real time like how people have been combating against it for several years now, like more than 2 years now. That community, my friends in like community movement builders and other orgs have been pushing back against it, and slowly it's been working. So like over time, some of the different funders that they had have backed out. Like different people who, different like corporate entities who have pledged money have backed out because we were applying pressure to them. Like, hey, don't give them this money. We're not going to mess with you anymore. It's like it's going to be a serious issue if you help them raise this money for police militarization that's going to affect this black and brown community.
yeah,
And then there's anarchists who have been destroying equipment and setting stuff on fire. And that works too because contractors have been dropping out left and right. One of their biggest contractors, Atlas, just dropped out because they went to his house. Like they woke him up. Like people
Mm.
are not playing with them, and so I don't think it's going to get built because no matter what, we have all these different tactics from folks all over the country, nationally, like pushing back against it, saying "Stop Cop City," and people there pushing back against the folks who are, trying to build it, like the contractors. And so I think that that's one of the coolest things that I've noticed in real time is that like they're getting people to drop out, and if they
Mm-hmm.
want to try to build it, then their equipment is destroyed. I mean, and that's fine. They got insurance; they'll be okay. But
We don't condone violence over here, but anyway, I'm glad that's working out for you. With your
I mean, it wasn't
organization.
me. I don't know who did it. It was some white people.
We
I
don't need
don't.
to. You don't need to tell anybody who.
Yeah, I'm
But
not stupid enough to do no shit like that because I'll go to jail. It was some white people who wanted to risk it all, and I said, "That's fine. You do what you got to do. It ain't got nothing to do with me." But it worked. So
hmm, there you go. Um, oh, that reminds me. Have you ever seen any of the videos of staged protesters, like operatives or whatever, at any of the protests from a couple of years ago?
I saw like that report thing that came out about that. But I don't think I've ever seen them like at a protest in the crowd. I wasn't
Yeah,
paying attention. I mostly probably didn't see because I wasn't paying attention because I was paying attention to what I was doing.
yeah.
So I probably wouldn't have seen them anyways. But I don't talk to strangers no way, so you'll never catch me slipping.
Okay.
I'm here.
Oh, oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Um. So yeah. Okay. So you've never seen anything like that, like any agitation or anything.
Oh, I've definitely seen agitation, but I haven't seen like what I would say like is a secret agent or something. I've never seen that. But I
Yeah.
know they exist. I mean, they exist everywhere.
Hey, yeah. Well, I mean that's the end of that. But yeah, I don't know. I just wanted to address that real quick. I thought that was pretty strange. And there's always like I don't know, like you never know people's motives. What they're really
True.
trying
And
to
that's why I
make
don't talk to
happen.
strangers.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Um, but yeah, one thing I did want to touch on a little bit is you work a lot with the Democratic Party specifically, both with
No, the
no.
Young Democrats separate.
Okay, so how do they like what's kind of their association with the Democratic Party, if any?
I mean, they both like agree with democratic values and stuff like that, but they're two separate orgs. I mean, I personally would never be in the Democratic Party. I would never like run for office in the Democratic Party or anything like that because it's way easier to like push young Dems to be more radical. It's way harder to do that with older Dems, and they're annoying as fuck. And they don't respect Black labor. They don't respect young Dems labor, and they're just all about the establishment. And I don't believe in a lot of that. So
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Yeah, I was gonna ask about that because I do notice like a lot of the times political parties are used to kind of like to calm people down almost to say okay we're here for these issues but don't go that far or we can't support you on this, we
mm-hmm.
can't do this for you, we can't do that for you if you do this.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and I think that I've seen that in the Democratic Party for sure. I've not. I don't see that in like young Dems. Like they're not gonna
yeah,
tell someone that they can only support you so far. They don't do that. And I think that also had a lot to do with like the different folks that we've gotten into like those different positions. Like we've recruited a lot of me and other folks like throughout the country have recruited a lot of like organizers and activists to be in Young Dems, and so they are more like liberal and more willing to like push the needle versus the Democratic Party because I mean it was the older Dems who were getting on me about calling Biden a white moderate, and I was like,
mm-hmm.
give a fuck. Like he is. And y'all are so big on lying to yourself about who he really is. And that's why we can't get nothing done because y'all don't want to call it out.
Hmm. Yeah. So do you think you think kind of pushing people a little farther ideologically is the key? But do you ever do you think that's the key? And do you ever think you'll be able to push these changes into a more official platform, whether in the Democratic Party or somewhere else?
Yeah, I mean, I would say probably not within the Democratic Party,
Mm-hmm.
mainly because I don't want to. I don't want to be in it. I don't really like them. I don't really feel like they value Black women specifically. They only, really lean on us when they feel like they need our votes. And one of the main reasons why I even like organize within Black, like within not Black within Democratic politics, is because like we have a major two party system, and because we
Yeah.
don't have enough people who are within a different party, like the Green Party or other parties, to actually make a difference within like candidates and stuff like that. It doesn't like actually suit me or give me any kind of empowerment to be in those because I can't make any actual tangible change
Okay.
versus being in Young Dems where I can make actual real time change, like us
Hmm.
putting out a letter of different, chapters saying that they support the Stop Cop City movement, or us putting out that video about Biden, or us doing a rally at the White House. Like all those things I was able to do because I'm able to push them that far. I can't do that within other like parties because they don't have that much power.
Hmm. And the
So
Democratic, you wouldn't have the Democratic groups all signing something like that. Yeah.
yeah.
Um. So, sorry, we were talking about. Oh yeah, political parties. Okay. Yeah. So we do we're a journalism organization, but we like to draw attention to things, very non kind of in a non-party way, a non-partisan way, to get people from all sides who need to hear
Yeah.
about things. But so we work with Green Party people, libertarian people. Uh, One of our first
Oh
guests
yeah,
on the
I have
show,
friends in the Green Party, so
yeah, yeah, we're big fans of them. One of our first guests, Carl Romanelli, he was actually strong armed out of his election for senator, as in like literally, like financially and
wow.
with lawyers and things, in 2006 for senator. Um, so do you think like with problems like that and the stuff you're doing being kind of extreme, like you think you'll ever make something whether it's more official, political organization? You ever think you'll run for office or anything like that?
No, I don't want to do
No.
that. I'm extremely not interested.
You're looking more to fix things like from the ground up, you'd say.
I wouldn't even necessarily say fix things, but like definitely make an impact.
Hmm.
So like even though I can't cancel the student loans myself, but I can definitely
Yeah.
call Biden out for it, and I can put pressure on him through this org that has 100,000 plus members. Like I can do that,
I see.
and that can lead to some kind of impactful policy change, but not like I can't fix it myself. Like that's just not realistic.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I definitely see the power in using different like orgs and membership to push them to do the right thing.
Yeah, I like that. uh, yeah, we like to draw attention to like very specific things, because when you get like the individuals in the picture, like and when you call them out, even like there's no, you can't make up excuses at that point. You can't, move on to other things.
Yeah,
So yeah, it's very effective. I'm gonna wrap it up in a couple minutes here, but thank you for coming on.
yeah.
We appreciate it a lot. This is Sanity Check. We're here with the Independent Gazette with Amber Sherman. You could see her. She's on the top of the screen here at Amber Sherman, or I don't know what it is. At
Well, like my
Amberisms.
Twitter.
Yeah, Amberisms with an underscore.
Yeah.
And at the Black YDA, she is the chair of the Black Young Democrats of America, one of a few. Thank you for joining us. Had a great time talking with you. You have a good night.
Alrighty.